morning. I'd like you to imagine declaring one of the world's most vital waterways completely closed to global trade on a Tuesday, only to sit down and sign a historic peace deal on a Wednesday.
Right. It sounds like a complete paradox.
Yeah.
Contradictory, even.
Exactly. But in the Middle East right now, it is a deliberate, highly calculated strategy. So welcome to the deep dive. And before we unpack the mechanics of this diplomatic whiplash, we are obliged to acknowledge the sponsor of today's analysis, ProWave AI.
Yes, and we should note this briefing is generated by Stylo News, the AI-powered news application.
Right. And today's deep dive is titled, From Gaza to Hormuz, the Conflicts Reshaping the Middle East. We are going to be looking at the entire Middle East region, and we are assessing the facts as they stand today, the 15th of June, 2026.
And to give you a clear baseline on the intelligence you are about to hear, Stylo News is essentially the consumer application of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
Which is quite a robust tool, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That enterprise system is utilized heavily for daily operations by government intelligence agencies, the military, and global business enterprises.
So by using this tool, you, the listener, have unique access to the same caliber of intelligence synthesis designed to support the world's primary decision makers.
Precisely. It draws on over 250 distinct real-time sources across multiple languages.
Now, as we examine this theater, our mission is to present the facts neutrally. We are pursuing three interconnected strategic lines of analysis today.
Right. The first being, can Iran and its regional partners, specifically Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, preserve their military capabilities, maintain internal stability, and impose costs on their adversaries?
And second, can the United States and its regional partners effectively degrade those capabilities, restore deterrence, and, well, return all parties to meaningful diplomacy?
And the third line of analysis is whether Israel can continue to protect its population while shaping conditions for a sustainable peace arrangement.
Because, these are not isolated tactical skirmishes you're observing.
No, not at all. They are deeply interconnected strategic challenges. And to understand the broader architecture of this conflict, we must begin at the geographic and political epicenter.
Right, the Gaza Strip and the mounting domestic pressures within Israel. At this hour, the diplomatic talks in Cairo are, well, they're functionally stalled.
Yes. The intelligence assessments we are reviewing indicate with high confidence that Hamas refuses to disarm.
I mean, their leadership continues to demand a full Israeli military withdrawal from the territory as a non-negotiable precondition for any agreement.
And the intelligence sources also highlight significant institutional shifts happening alongside this diplomatic deadlock. Just yesterday, on June 14th, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, terminated 70 of its Gaza-based staff members.
Amidst allegations of ties to Hamas, correct?
Exactly. And the implications of this go far beyond a simple headline about administrative restructuring. We need to look at the mechanics of this on the ground.
Right, because when you sever a portion of the administrative spine responsible for distributing aid, you create an immediate power vacuum.
Precisely. The physical distribution of food, water, and medical supplies requires a highly organized logistical network. If the primary international agency is forced to pull back its operational footprint due to security vetting, the distribution network fractures.
Which means someone else has to step in.
Always. Historically, in any conflict zone, when civilian administration collapses, armed factions step in to control the resources. Whoever controls the bread and the fuel controls the population.
So, ironically, the termination of these staff members inadvertently risks strengthening the very clandestine networks Israel is attempting to dismantle.
Yes, as local militias seize the abandoned logistical nodes, and at the same time, the political environment within Israel is reaching a boiling point.
I mean, protesters have taken to the streets in Tel Aviv in massive numbers. They're demanding the establishment of an independent state commission.
Right, seeking structural government accountability from Prime Minister Netanyahu regarding the systemic security failures that led to the 2023 Hamas attacks.
So Israel's perspective is focused entirely on neutralizing immediate and future threats to its population, but the government is attempting to execute this long-term campaign while standing on increasingly fractured political ground at home.
And Hamas is watching that domestic Israeli fracture very closely. Their primary objective is survival and maintaining internal control over Gaza.
Which is reflected online, right? I mean, when we analyze the sentiment on social media platforms, particularly X, there is a prevailing skepticism across the political spectrum that Hamas will ever voluntarily surrender its weapons.
Absolutely. The prevailing assessment is that Hamas is utilizing the Cairo negotiation process just to survive politically and run out the clock on the Israeli government's domestic mandate.
It makes me think, if we view Hamas's weapons stockpiles not just as military assets, but as a sort of load-bearing wall in their entire political and administrative structure, I mean, the refusal to disarm makes structural sense, doesn't it?
It does. A load-bearing wall cannot be removed without the structure collapsing.
Right. So if Israel achieves significant military degradation, destroying tunnels and confiscating munitions, but the underlying political conditions remain frozen, are we just looking at a paused conflict rather than a resolved one?
I would say yes. For Hamas, their armed capability is the absolute guarantor of their political authority. Without a third-party monitoring mechanism or a heavily conditioned political settlement that fundamentally alters governance, they will simply conceal the remaining stockpiles.
They will just adapt into a fully clandestine insurgent structure.
Precisely. They will trade territorial governance for guerrilla survival. It is a pause, not a resolution.
And because a resolution in Gaza remains so elusive, the conflict has predictably spilled over, forcing us to look at the northern borders.
Right, Lebanon. Hezbollah is essentially acting as a pressure valve for this broader network of regional actors.
Whenever the pressure on Hamas in Gaza reaches a critical threshold, Hezbollah turns up the heat in Lebanon. It divides Israel's military focus and resources.
But the diplomatic track in Lebanon is currently as fraught as the one in Cairo. A United States-backed ceasefire framework has been categorically rejected by Hezbollah and aligned political figures within the Lebanese government.
And the primary point of contention there is a clause requiring Hezbollah's forces to withdraw south of the Litani River, right?
Exactly. The Litani River has historically served as a geographic buffer zone, roughly 18 miles north of the Israeli border. Hezbollah views any constraint on its military freedom of action within that southern territory as completely unacceptable.
And the rejection of that framework has really shifted the environment from diplomatic posturing to heavy kinetic activity.
Yes, a dramatic increase in actual localized combat. Reports confirm Israeli forces advancing near the town of Majd al-Zun, where they were directly confronted by Hezbollah fighters.
And we're seeing civilian impact, too. Israel has issued evacuation warnings for 20 villages south of the Litani River, and we are seeing artillery shelling near the Nabati government hospital.
The proximity of heavy artillery to major civilian medical infrastructure illustrates how rapidly the boundaries of this conflict are deteriorating. And to fully grasp the danger of this theater, you really must look at the structural weakness of the Lebanese state apparatus.
I mean, the government in Beirut is highly fragile. They're facing severe internal friction involving President Elun, who is under intense pressure from factions aligned with Hezbollah,
deepening the institutional paralysis. Meanwhile, the Lebanese armed forces, the official military, are caught in an impossible position.
Right. They face intense international pressure to assert control and confront Hezbollah, but doing so carries an exceptionally high risk of inciting a full-scale civil war.
Yes, fracturing the military along sectarian lines.
So, the international community is attempting to negotiate a complex ceasefire in a country where the official government is paralyzed and the state military is sidelined. Are diplomats essentially trying to negotiate a ceasefire with a ghost ship?
A ghost ship.
Yeah, a vessel that looks like a sovereign state from a distance but has absolutely no one at the helm capable of steering it?
That is an apt assessment. It is a ghost ship, but one that is heavily armed and carrying highly volatile cargo. The structural trap for international diplomats is that you cannot enforce a treaty with an entity that lacks a monopoly on the use of force within its own borders.
Because Lebanon's institutions historically endure through paralysis rather than decisive action.
Exactly. So because the state cannot enforce a ceasefire, external diplomats are forced to negotiate indirectly with Hezbollah, the very non-state actor driving the conflict.
Which inadvertently grants them the political legitimacy the international community claims to want to deny them. But Hezbollah is not the only lever being pulled to relieve the pressure on Gaza. While Hezbollah threatens a physical border in the north, another proxy is threatening the global economy in the south.
Yes, the economic choke points of the global supply chain are being squeezed in the Red Sea. We are shifting focus geographically to the Bab al-Mandab Strait.
The narrow passage connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. Here, the narrative moves away from territorial border disputes and directly into the realm of global economic disruption.
And much like Lebanon, the internationally recognized Yemeni government is incredibly fragile. Over the last few days, severe local protests have erupted in southern cities like Aden and Hadramaut.
Citizens are protesting over catastrophic failures in basic services, right? Electricity grids collapsing, water shortages.
And there are reports of security forces firing on demonstrators. The state is buckling under its own weight. Capitalizing on that internal instability, the Houthis in northern Yemen have drastically escalated their maritime operations.
They have explicitly declared that any commercial ships linked to Israel are legitimate targets.
Furthermore, we are tracking renewed Houthi military offenses along Yemen's Red Sea coast, particularly near the port city of Mocha. Consolidating control over this coastal territory suggests they are actively shaping the battle space for a sustained campaign against international shipping lanes.
The Houthis are utilizing maritime disruption as a classic asymmetric tactic. They are using relatively cheap, commercially available drones and modified ballistic missiles to threaten billion-dollar commercial cargo ships.
And advanced naval destroyers.
Right. So if the Bab al-Mandab Strait is a global toll booth, the Houthis have essentially hijacked it, operating like a regional cartel. But surely precision strikes against their launch sites by the United States and its partners must degrade them eventually, right?
Well, one would think so. But the assumption that you can bomb an asymmetric force into submission relies on a conventional understanding of warfare that simply does not apply to the Houthis.
Oh.
Restoring deterrence is exceptionally difficult because the Houthis operate with highly mobile, dispersed launch systems hidden in mountainous terrain. More importantly, they have a remarkably high tolerance for infrastructural damage.
Because they have endured over a decade of relentless aerial bombardment already.
Precisely. For Houthi leadership, the domestic political capital gained by demonstrating resistance against global powers far outweighs the cost of absorbing precision airstrikes. They don't need to win a naval battle.
They just need to make the insurance premiums for commercial shipping companies too expensive to justify transiting the Red Sea.
Exactly. And the actions of Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen all trace back to the strategic posture of their primary backer.
Right. To understand the full scope of this coordinated pressure campaign, we must look at the apex of the conflict, Iran, the Gulf Cooperation Council region, and a highly critical diplomatic deadline unfolding today.
The intense military posturing by Iranian proxies across the region is currently colliding with high-stakes, direct diplomacy. The economic pressure on Iran is severe right now.
Because United States and Israeli military operations, alongside sweeping financial sanctions, have severely degraded Iran's economy. The current maritime blockades are costing Tehran an estimated $450 million a day in lost energy revenue.
Yes, and in what appears to be a massive, sudden escalation. Just yesterday, June 14th, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, declared the Strait of Hormuz completely closed to commercial transit.
And we should note, the IRGC operates as the paramount military and political force in the country, separate from the traditional Iranian military.
Right, and they warned all international vessels to halt movement. Concurrently, United States forces in the area have been actively intercepting Iranian drones targeting merchant ships.
And this military friction presents an immediate, localized threat to the Gulf Cooperation Council nations. The intelligence estimates indicate a highly credible spillover threat of Iranian missile or drone strikes affecting these territories.
We are looking specifically at Bahrain, which is home to the United States Fifth Fleet, as well as Kuwait. In response to the strait closure, the U.S. has engaged in rapid contingency planning,
which reportedly includes actionable options for a potential amphibious assault on Iran's Karg Island, a critical node in their oil export infrastructure.
Just brings us back to the diplomatic whiplash we mentioned at the start of the briefing.
Exactly. Because despite this massive military escalation, despite the IRGC declaring one of the most vital oil arteries in the world closed, United States President Donald Trump has announced an anticipated U.S. Iran peace deal.
Right, an agreement scheduled to be signed today, June 15th, in Islamabad, Pakistan. The stated goal of this deal is to immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz and de-escalate regional tensions.
So we are essentially watching a high-level diplomatic negotiation conducted at gunpoint, closing a vital global strait on the 14th of June, only to sign a peace deal on the 15th of June.
It's quite something.
Is this a classic escalate to de-escalate tactic? Are we seeing actors pushing the needle entirely into the red, risking a catastrophic global conflict simply to secure marginally better terms at the negotiating table?
Well, the intelligence indicators point to exactly that dual-track strategy. Tehran is applying intense coercive military pressure while simultaneously engaging in active negotiation.
Because Iran appears to prefer avoiding a full-scale conventional war with the United States.
Precisely. However, by threatening the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil flows, they remind the global community of the catastrophic economic pain they can inflict.
They are manufacturing a severe, immediate crisis to artificially inflate the perceived value of the diplomatic solutions scheduled for today in Islamabad.
Yes, the IRGC asserts national sovereignty and projects power to their domestic base, while the diplomatic corps secures sanction relief.
So as we look to the future outlook based on today's briefing, the most critical event for you to watch in the coming days is the outcome of these June 15th Islamabad negotiations.
The key metric will not merely be the signing of a document, though. It'll be whether a successful agreement actually suppresses direct Iranian military action in the Gulf.
And crucially, whether the local proxy networks Hezbollah in southern Lebanon or the Houthis in the Red Sea will adhere to any terms agreed upon by the U.S. and Iran.
Right. A failed agreement, conversely, would likely increase the probability of preemptive attacks on Israel and U.S.-aligned targets in the Gulf within days.
Now, before we conclude our analysis of these theaters, there is one final unaddressed thread from the intelligence sources that requires your consideration.
Yes, a very important point.
Alongside the kinetic military strikes, the artillery, and the physical maritime blockades, reports indicate that Iran has explicitly targeted American technology firms and digital infrastructure operating in the Gulf region.
It's a significant shift.
It is. As you monitor these events, ponder what this means for the future of global conflict. We are entering an era where global tech supply chains and digital data hubs are held at the exact same risk as physical maritime straits.
The choke points of the future may not be made of water, but of data.
Absolutely.
And to ensure you can continue monitoring these complex, multi-domain global shifts, we encourage you to utilize the tool that generated today's insights. Stylo News is available as a mobile and computer application.
Highly recommended.
It allows you to generate personal intelligence-style briefs tailored to your specific interests, synthesizing hundreds of traditional news sources and real-time social media data from X.
You can subscribe and get AI-powered news on demand by visiting www.stylonews.com. Well, that concludes the formal portion of our briefing today. I'm so glad we could sit down and unpack the mechanics of these events together. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to this deep dive.
It is always a pleasure to walk through these complex, interconnected issues with you and our listeners.
If there's a specific global event, historical context, or emerging topic you would like us to cover in a future deep dive, please let us know. And don't forget to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms for real-time updates. Until next time, stay curious and keep an eye on those digital choke points.